Hi, welcome to D&C Digital Facebook Live. I'm reporter Patti Singer. I got to tell you, I watched the Mary Tyler Moore Show when I was in junior high and I was in high school. It was after I decided I was going to become a sports writer. Mary's character of Mary Richards, she wasn't a sports writer, but she was everything that I wanted to be. She was independent and she was smart. Deep down, she was confident, even though she had to fake it a few times. She had friends who loved her like family, and she showed that when you were off on your own, your friends were your family. For women of my generation, Mary Richards showed us that we could make it after all. My colleague Tracy Schuhmacher, she grew up with Mary as well as I did, and we want to share with you and have you share with us how Mary Richards influenced your life. We'll be monitoring on Facebook Live. Please send us your comments. 40 years, it's 40 years after Mary and her colleagues hugged their way out of that WJMTV newsroom. Tracy, myself, and hopefully you, we're going to help young women like my colleague Sarah Taddeo. She's starting her career, making her way in the world to understand why Mary Richards is still so important to people like you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm excited. I watched a few clips of her today and just, it's so sad, her loss for us, but I've learned from my colleagues what a wonderful example she was of how to be a woman in the workplace and how to stand up for ourselves, which is such an amazing thing that we all need to know right now, I think, and be reminded of. So
when women weren't common in the workplace, and they weren't common in that workplace, I started professional journalism in 1981. And I was the first, in sports, and I was the first woman in a lot of places. Still, even at that time, so her show was off the air for 4 years. She had trailblazed as an associate producer. And even now, we still come up with, the first woman. Mm-hmm. And Mary was that first woman. Mary Richards was that first woman in the newsroom. But she talked to the first woman in so many places.
Yeah, I don't have that. I don't think I've had that experience of being the first woman in anything. I mean, I'm 6 years behind you, so I think maybe I'm the start of where maybe we took this for granted. I watched Mary Tyler Moore, that show, when I was in elementary and junior high school. And she was this fashionable woman. She had this cool apartment. She had a cool life. And that just seemed like a great life to me, and I, sort of aspired to be that way, to have this cool young single life. Like when people were going to college at the time, some people would say, "I'm going for my MRS degree." Remember that saying?
Yeah.
I'm going for my
that even
MRS
happens
degree
now, which is so sad.
People say that now, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So maybe that isn't old. But I never was going for my MRS degree. I studied journalism and wanted a cool career like Mary Richards had. And I think I sort of maybe took it for granted. Yeah. So I went home last night after she died, and I'm obsessively cleaning my office, and I turned on the very first season of Mary Tyler Moore's show. And so, you got the pilot and how they set it up and all that other kind of stuff. And it was pretty fascinating because she was in a long-term relationship, 2 years. She wanted to get married. He kind of led her on. And she chose to walk away from this relationship and interview for this job and all that. And I think it was probably pretty groundbreaking.
Oh,
yeah. I was going to ask you guys, I was watching different clips of her, and, she was funny in some, she was, compassionate and heartfelt in others. Like, what were some of the character traits, I guess, that she might have been pioneering on television at that point? Like if you guys could pinpoint for me, having not really watched the show at its heyday, what were some of the things that you said, wow, like that's the first time that a woman has acted in XYZ way on a show?
Well, it was interesting because at that time, I'm in junior high and I'm in high school, so I'm young. I don't
Right,
really know
yeah.
what she's doing at that point that's going to have an influence on me. But when I look back on the shows, I see that she always tried to be respectful and yet always tried to make her voice heard. And that was still, I think, a difficult time, and I think maybe some women in some fields still have that balance now of I need to be strong and assertive, yet. Mm-hmm. How do I do that without coming off as, the you-know-what word, and I still need to get myself heard and stick up for myself and advocate for myself. And there were numerous instances, in a sense, where she had to do that, and yet at the same time, she always called him Mr. Grant. She always called her boss. She was the only person in the newsroom who called her boss Mr. Grant. I have not called a boss of mine Mr. or Ms. or Mrs. in, I don't think, ever.
Right. Sometimes we call them by the last names, you know. So it is interesting because, you know, I think now we still try to hit that balance between like being respectful and making our voice heard, but it's almost like, you know, I walked into the newsroom almost 3 years now I've been working here, and knowing I'm trying to hit that balance, but knowing that I have the ability, like it's expected of me to raise my voice. Like it's not something that's not okay, I guess. So I'm not fighting against that, what is it? I'm not sure what word I'm looking for, but when people expect you to stay quiet, I'm not fighting against that anymore. And maybe people were back in the 70s, and you know, maybe she broke that. And so now for me, I know I can speak up whenever I want to. I don't have to if I don't want to, but I can in a meeting or with my editors or whatever.
I mean, I had one of my first workplaces was, there was just myself and one other, again, college-age woman there, and it was very intimidating. And I don't know at the time that I would rush back to my dorm on Saturday night, well, so let's see how Mary handled this. But I know having watched her and having had that confidence, I know that was a huge influence on me, whether the times that I realized I want her to be an influence on me, or just from having watched the show and seeing all the dynamics, I just know it was an influence on me because I wanted to be Mary Richards.
Yeah.
I wanted to be that person.
So
and I could be that person.
Yeah. In terms of your career, was it more?
Yeah, in terms of, yeah, sure, definitely, because there weren't a lot of opportunities for me where I grew up to be what I wanted to be, a sports writer. It was basically one newspaper town. You had to go someplace else for that. I had to be out on my own. I had to leave family and friends and had to make new friends to be my family, and all the things that that she went through, and having to rely on your work friends, your work family, making your way in the world. The one scene I love, I watched it last night at the beginning, when she's in the supermarket and she's looking over the meat and she just looks at it and goes, rolls her eyes and tosses the meat into the cart. I gotta have this again for dinner tonight. I mean, that just is so perfect for any person on their own who has to do everything for themselves. I gotta go shop again. Okay, I'll buy this again. And just that look of just utter despair on her face on that. I love
Totally
that
get it.
particular
Yeah.
one. Yeah, I love that particular opening.
Yeah.
Well, I liked in the beginning so again, I watched the first 4 episodes of the first season, and she's in a dispute with Rhoda over her apartment, which it was there for the pilot and it never progressed. They were friends the next episode, but cool. I think in today's dramas it would play it out over a season. But anyway, she was talking to somebody, and she looked at the guy and said, maybe it was a locksmith, and she goes, "I suppose you think that I'm a pushover?" And he said, "Yeah." And she said, "Yeah, I kind of am." And then she kind of walked away. And I think it's interesting that throughout, I think the course of that 7 years, she found that voice, that way to stand up for herself, and yet still be a woman, and find that balance. And I think that made her an appealing character for a lot of people. She wasn't strident, she struggled to find how to express herself, and and she was beautiful and fashionable and had a great apartment, and there were a lot of reasons to like her character.
That's awesome. Just to take a break real quick, Gina, my name is Sarah Taddeo. I'm a reporter. This is Patti Singer and Tracy Schuhmacher. We're all reporters at the D&C, and we are talking about Mary Tyler Moore and her character, Mary Richards' impact on women through the Mary Tyler Moore show. So just so you know.
And
keep
please
watching.
feel free to chime in if you have any
I'm watching the
thoughts?
comments here on the phone. So if you have a question about Mary Tyler Moore or her show, or want to share a memory of your own that you have, please comment and I'll bring it up in our discussion. So
you've had a crash course in Mary Richards in the
I
last
have.
decade. So what is it that you see in her that maybe you see in some of the older women, not us of course, the older women that you work with, but you see that maybe maybe they've been influenced by the people before them, and either in the workplace or just in just women's evolution in society?
yeah, I mean, I really think she a lot of it was played off as, comedic relief in the show, right? But she would raise her voice at a certain time. Like, I watched a clip with her parents, and then her friend, I think, was it Rhoda, her friend, and she would, like, say these things, and everyone would be like, and she was like, what? Like I'm just, I'm on the birth control pill, or I'm this or that. And, she didn't seem to be apologetic for the ways that she was blazing trails for women. And then all of her friends, or her parents would be like, oh, okay, we're just going to go and talk about you in the background. Kind of, that was like the vibe I got. But, she didn't care. It was like, I'm me, and I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and you can think what you want to of it. And not to say she wasn't respectful, but it was sort of like, I'm just going to assert myself in the way that I think is the best way to live my life. And I think in a lot of ways we could still take from that, especially in the workplace. I mean, there's a lot going on, especially as a journalist. I'm seeing, the way that she acted has bearing on the way that I can act, obviously respectfully in a newsroom, in a workplace as a young woman. So,
Do you have anything from?
So Jocelyn commented she allowed women to see what strength women all possess, First Lady of TV.
Yep.
Totally agree.
Yeah,
I mean, who can
yeah.
dispute that?
Yeah.
Ray Trim mentioned her effortless fight to cure diabetes. We as a health reporter, I mean, you're very aware of
and
diabetes.
Celebrities and the impact that they can give to a disease like that. And yes, and she lived most of her adult life with that condition, and look what she was able to accomplish.
And she lived till 80, and I've got to believe that we've come a long way in the control of diabetes since
Right,
then.
and she had type 1, which is a little bit different from some of the diabetes we hear about now of type 2, which is often can be attributed to lifestyle. Her condition was not. So yeah, she was a spokesperson for the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation. She did so much for so many people through many of her roles. I mean, going back to Laura Petrie, but the Mary Richards one was the one, I guess, where I came of age, became aware of what role models can be, what TV, what all media can do, how it can influence society, and looking at what her influence has on society. I mean, we talked up in the newsroom before. I said, I think she's probably just as important. Mary Richards is as important as Gloria Steinem. I don't know. What do other people think about that? Who, where is she in the pantheon for moving women's rights? If there was a Mount Rushmore for women's rights, was Mary Richards up there?
Well, I mean, I would think that she would make a single career woman sort of more approachable. She was very funny. I mean, to compare her to Gloria Steinem, I mean that's.
But how do they influence? How do they influence society and the influence that they have? How is a character like that relate? How can a character like that relate to the influence that an actual, real life person has? But what they both do and how they change how we look at stereotypical roles or what we expect from certain women in certain roles and certain status in society.
I think she had a unique position too, because activists of course have a great position, but she was on television, so it almost gave her like this pop culture kind of appeal. So she was there, she had people's eyes, during prime time or whatever, and she was able to get these values of women out there in front of a lot of people. So I wanted to ask you guys, like, how did you were young at that point, how did your parents view the show and view her? Like was there sort of this conversation like, oh, she's a kind of hooligan type thing, or was it more like, oh, she's actually, doing well for women right now? Was it?
I tell you, it's fascinating. While my family, we would watch the Dick Van Dyke Show. She was on because I was much younger then. Saturday nights, I would be home by myself. My parents would go out. That would be their night out. They would go to
That's what I remember.
I
watched it with the sitter.
Right. They went to play bridge almost every Saturday night.
Gosh.
So I'm home alone watching that whole night of TV. Bob Newhart, Mary Tyler Moore, Carol Burnett. And I'm watching the Mary Tyler Moore Show by myself, which is probably, really pretty formative. So here I am, even though I'm in my safe parents' house, watching the show by myself, absorbing this powerful female role model.
Yeah. And that's, that's interesting. It's almost like you had your own view of the show and nobody else was influencing
exactly.
that.
And now we tell parents, watch shows with your children so you can discuss what's going on. Okay, don't do what my parents did with the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
I don't remember ever
which
sitting and talking about a TV show ever with my parents. I'd like to say I did, but they very much were, go out on the weekends and leave your kids with the sitter. And that was a good night because that's the night we got chips and macaroni and cheese from the box. And
yeah. Oh my
and
gosh.
so I
Fun night
remember, fighting over the TV with my brother and sister. But yeah, I don't remember ever having a substantive discussion.
So these were sort of like my private moments with this to absorb what she was saying, the message she was saying, and the message she wasn't saying, just the message what she was portraying.
Yeah.
Huge influence on my life.
And comedically, tremendous. I don't think it was.
To be taken too seriously.
It's not like it was, Orange is the New Black or something. I mean, it was, it was very lighthearted. I think of All in the Family as probably being more overtly revolutionary in that sort of era, which is fuzzy to me. Sure. Whereas this one was just, it was just much lighter. I don't think you'd kind of look at it and go, that it was necessarily revolutionary or controversial or anything like that. It was just fun, but it kind of communicated to you through the plot, I think.
So Mary Richards, subversive feminist?
Yeah. Hey, maybe.
All the women's studies groups can look at it that way now.
So did you miss it when it went off the air? Like, what was that like?
Oh yeah. It was just. She wasn't there anymore. I mean, it was just this emptiness. Now, then I'm in college and I'm busy and things like that, so you don't spend as much time with television. But yes, there was definitely, and when I watch the reruns now, and years ago, a friend of mine gave me a gift of 4 box sets. So last night I broke one of them out and did minor binge watching. And I look at it and they stand up. I mean, the clothing is very dated, and that's what's called a push-button telephone. She was answering last night for everybody who doesn't know what
the ring of the telephone. I know, that got to me too.
And Murray's on a typewriter. That's, again, go to a museum and you can find that. But the themes are the same. The themes hold up, and I think that's 40 years later. That's what, if you spend the time to, if somebody wants to binge watch those shows, they'll see the themes will stand up.
Yeah.
And that's what makes a classic.
No, absolutely. Gina actually commented and said, Mary Richards was a role model for young women / girls growing up in the 70s. I wanted to be just like her, have her job and live in a cool apartment in her attic of an older house, in the attic of an older house. Loved that Palladian window. Although at the time I had no idea that window styles had names.
I'm not sure I would have named that window style even now.
Yeah. So was it like a cool, I only saw one clip of her in her apartment. Was it a cool apartment? I mean, was it like a fashion model too? Or?
It was, it had shag carpet.
Oh my gosh. The shag.
Sunken kind of living room.
Yeah, it was a sunken living room.
It was a studio, right? So the bed was the fold out. Yeah. The only time she went off screen was to go change clothes. So everything was in one area.
But it looked cool. It had cool furnishings. There was a big M on the wall, which now those letters are kind of a thing now. And you kind of felt like, that would be a cool place. Although one of the running gags was that she threw terrible parties,
That's the one I watched last night. Was the one which was the bad party, And
so the character threw bad parties.
Yeah, she threw terrible parties. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. But my second apartment was sort of like a studio. It didn't have shag carpeting, didn't have a sunken living area. It had parquet floors, which were just tremendous.
Cool.
But it was the same sort of thing. It was that kind of. That's what you could afford. That was it, and it was in kind of a trendy little building. It was kind of hip for 1983, and it kind of reminded me a lot of that.
Yeah, and you should talk about her clothes because you were saying earlier, we're trying to make that the focus.
It is not, but I love fashion. I love to look at it. I don't necessarily dress fashionably, but I appreciate it. I'm interested in it. Project Runway, I've watched every episode. And if you watch that, you can. I feel like you can see, I feel like there's a good amount of 60s influence these days in furnishings with that mid-century modern. And I think in the clothing, there's allusions to that. So I think if you look at some of the things she wears, you probably can see what some of these new fashions are alluding to. It's just beautiful, and I think that again, it made her approachable. It made that single life seem appealing. She's fashionable. She's looking good. She's going to work. She's doing her thing, and it was kind of aspirational.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, the fashion thing, it can really relate to the singleness in a way, to say we're not just lying in a puddle of despair, we're having fun, we're doing fun things, we're, on trend and all of that.
And I think, I don't know where this whole, old maid spinster, where the philosophy was at the time, but I really do think that they were really going for somebody who, she walked away from a relationship. She wasn't unattractive. She wasn't an old maid. She was, somebody very capably and sort of decidedly living a single life. There were men in this situation that she'd be like, yeah, not into that guy. So it wasn't like she was desperately going after men. I think she was just somebody to aspire to.
It was, because she was able to have a complete life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
on her own.
There were a lot of the dating, her dates and Rhoda's dates. I mean, that was a running gag throughout it. But they were able to make their lives what they wanted them to be, and they had complete lives for them.
Yeah, and you didn't get the sense that she was moaning and groaning because she didn't have a man. Although I will say that in one of those first episodes, she ended up taking care of her landlord's daughter and thinking about the kind of mom she would be. And she was 30. So I think that they were speaking to that a little bit. I don't think I actually got through the end of that episode. I don't know.
You don't know what happened?
I don't know if there was a conclusion to that, but it was interesting that they were kind of, focusing on that.
Right.
But without necessarily her, talking about her, her eggs, aging or whatever.
But you look at the other relationships in the show, Phyllis and Lars. I mean, we never saw Lars. So that was Phyllis's husband.
So was Phyllis a friend?
Phyllis owned the building, and that's where. So we never saw Lars, and the Ed Asner character, Lou and Edie, right? They get divorced in the show. So there were other kinds of social expectations, social mores that were being pushed at the same time. In that time, in the middle '70s, I don't think there was a lot of divorce on TV. Somebody can comment to us and tell me if I'm wrong about that. But again, I'm in junior high and high school, not really aware of everything going on around. But to have this couple divorced on TV was, I think, also pushing things a little bit. So we had changing relationships.
Yeah.
Well,
didn't the producers of the Mary Tyler Moore Show not want her to be divorced? They wanted her to be broken up from someone, so that because divorce was such a big thing to have, I guess maybe to have a woman divorce her, initiate that divorce. So so that was sort of But I mean, to me, even having someone broken up, having said, I'm breaking up from you and living a fulfilled single life, I think is still really cool for women.
But 30 still tends to be that age where 30. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do?
Oh, yeah.
Am I too late? Do I still have time? Whatever. And so I think even back in the early 70s, 30 was probably a key age. I think now, I don't know, it may not be as much, but still, we won't put you on the spot on Facebook, I don't know how old you are. But I think anytime you hit a round number, there's some soul searching that goes on from in yourself, probably as a reflection of what society is expecting of you.
Right. And she, I think through this show, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. 30 even now, people are getting married in 30 now, and they'll say, oh, it's fine. But I think the general consensus is a little bit 30, you're reaching 30, what are you going to do with your life? Do you have a boyfriend? That's still out there. So to see, for me, growing up right now and in my mid-20s right now, to see her back in the 70s being able to be okay with that in a big way is cool. One other fashion comment, if I could, somebody said, I like her comment about only being able to wear pants once an episode weekly or so. I started working in the no pants allowed era, breaking away from that working rule. So that's very cool. I mean, I wear jeans most of the time to the newsroom. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but I do.
I think we're all sitting here in jeans.
Yes, we are. And that's something I would never think about at the workplace.
Oh, there was, even in the 80s, there was a company that had a well-known policy of not allowing women to wear pants to the workplace. So, it's coming. It's not that. It's not coming. It's not that far ago. That was the case. So.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I just got a few notes, but I'm not sure.
We're at 24 minutes.
We are at 24 minutes.
Well, you have anybody who is interested in in joining our conversation about this with some of the favorite episodes of one of the famous episodes is the death of Chuckles the Clown, and I think this sort of shows Mary Richards, her character is she wants to they're finding some humor in the fact that Chuckles the Clown was trampled by an elephant. He apparently was dressed as a giant peanut, and the elephant went after him and trampled them. And so we're not going to spoil the ending for you if you haven't seen it. But Mary is showing her range of feeling for her colleagues. I think maybe a little bit for herself in that situation. It's just absolutely hysterical episode that shows, I think, all of Mary Richards, all the character of her that viewers, male, female, were able to fall in love with.
No, that's also, that would be the one if someone has never seen the Mary Tyler Moore Show, should they watch that episode? What's your recommendation? What are your two's recommendations for an episode?
They're all kind of flooding in front of me, and I haven't watched a lot of them. I haven't really sat down to watch them in probably 7 or 8 years to really sit down and watch them. It's hard to know. you probably want to start with season 1 just to get a sense of the characters. I think the later seasons, not that big of a fan of for a variety of reasons. Obviously, the final episode, you have to watch that just because that is iconic in so many ways. You can, once you've seen a few of them and you get a sense of who the characters are, I would say pick and choose.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I'm gonna binge watch it. I started at 1-1, and I'm gonna follow the progression because I'm curious to see, what the writers do with this character and how it evolved. Because I was so young, I wouldn't have noticed that when I was little. And actually, the theme song even changes through the seasons, and I thought that was kind of interesting.
Like to change with the music of the time?
No,
well,
the
words and stuff changed. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yep.
I was like, wait, what is this one?
It starts off in the first season is how will you make it on your own?
And now
everybody sing along this
yeah,
world
and then
is
it goes
awfully
to
big
you're gonna make
Right,
it
yeah,
after
yeah.
all. It changes.
After it shows,
Tracy Schuhmacher, everyone.
2 shows, 7 and 10.
Hey, and I just want to point out the beret thing.
Oh, yes.
Jeff
said
that thing.
something about that.
So there is, Jeff's, DeVeronica wants us all to do that, but of course we don't have berets. But it's worth noting that there is a statue in Minneapolis of her with her beret. I went to Minneapolis, and when I was there, I made sure I visited that statue. I know a lot of people, pay their pilgrimages to that.
Right.
So, if you're a fan, definitely
Yeah,
something
if
worth
you're there.
checking out if you happen to go to Minneapolis.
Maybe they should put a replica in Seneca Falls because of all the things that she's done
Yeah,
for women.
Absolutely.
For
I
women
would be
in
totally
society.
on board with that.
Yeah, maybe
Sure, you can start that
I would
petition.
definitely do that.
You know what though? It's funny. I was just at the Seneca Falls Women March last weekend, and
Covering
a ton
it.
of covering it, and a ton of women had berets on, and I wonder if that was related to something different, but that just reminded me a lot of people had like these little, what are they called, tams or something? I don't know, like little berets. So that was kind of cool. Maybe that was, I don't know, harkening back to her or something. But
No idea.
Somebody said she had spunk.
She did,
That was a good
and
one.
Lou Grant hated spunk.
I hate spunk.
Her boss. It was the first episode.
Yeah.
He said, "You've got spunk." She goes, "Yes, I do." And he says, "I hate spunk." It's awesome. Love
Yeah,
it.
that's
Well,
another
we don't
kind of
hate
thing.
spunk, and
No, we
we're
don't.
proud of her for saying that.
We don't hate
A
spunk.
few of us have some spunk. I think.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for everyone's comments, and it's great to see people are watching and remember her like we do, and or like these ladies do. And I'm learning about her, so this is great. If anyone has anything else, let us know. But I think, how are you guys doing?
I'm good.
Pretty good. Thank you, Mary Richards,
Yeah, thank you
for
so
helping
much.
me.
Thanks for your life.
for my life, helping me make my life.
Awesome. All right. Well, have a good day, guys. Thanks so much for watching.
Thanks for joining
Have
D&C
a good
Digital
weekend.
Facebook Live.